Alright, today I'm comparing the Ibanez RGA21P1PB Premium and the Ibanez S671ALB Axion Label. I think the new RGA Premium here is pretty cool. I'm a fan of it, but you might be searching for less costly alternatives. The S here was discontinued after 2024, but I am still able to find some around still. You can find the S Axion Label here about $1,200 new. For used or clearance, it'll be less. And that's compared to the about $1,600 USD for the RGA. And that is, of course, for the fixed bridge version, as you can see here. If you click this video, you're looking to maybe find alternatives to save some money, or maybe you're just trying to see how the RGA compares to other models. And by the way, this video is not sponsored. These are both my guitars. I am a fan of Ibanez, but Ibanez nor any other brand has paid for this video. Alright, let's talk about playing feel, playability first. And I do want to address, yes, these are two different lines of guitars. They're both arch tops, they're both modern-ish super strats with the fixed bridges, but there are differences between the RGA and the S, and I've made a video on this, but pretty much you can see there's the S, it's got the arch top, the arch back, and then you've got on the RGA here, it's got the arch top, and then it's that typical super strat, that RG flat back with the belly carve. Functionally, these guitars are going to do similar things, being super strats with 24 frets, modern voiced pickups, etc. Just a summary on playability, the S was originally designed for 22 frets. They've updated the shape since to accommodate 24 frets, versus the RGA was based off of the RG, and that's always had 24 frets to my knowledge. It's going to feel a bit more natural reaching the 24th fret on the RGA. The S, you might run into some problems if you're doing super thumb behind the neck shred kind of playing. You know, playing like this, you can see my hand is hitting the bottom of the lower horn, but you have to really be doing it super extreme. And there are lots of kind of extreme shredders out there who have used an S series guitar to great effect. And I'm not saying I'm a virtuoso or a shredder by any means. I haven't had any problems playing this guitar. I'm saying if you are a kind of virtuoso shredder, this might be something to consider. One other thing on differences is that the RGA here, I've noticed it balances better. Maybe that's because the S series here is a little lighter, maybe because of that arch back and all that, the thin body. I've noticed the S's with the trims, they balance way better. But this S guitar, it's not SG levels of neck divey. It's not going to instantly fall to the ground if you let go of it. Mentioning this just for the sake of the conversation. So moving on from the bodies to the bridges, you've got different bridges here. You've got the Gibraltar Standard 3 versus the 2 right here. And they're both good bridges. I haven't had problems with them. They're stable. The bridges themselves hold their setup pretty well. There's a difference in the saddle shape. I made a video on comparing these two bridges, but basically the Gibraltar 2 has saddles that kind of gently curve away towards the back, the end of the body, versus the Gibraltar 3, there's a raised area near where the height adjustment screw bolt things are. If you're palm muting towards the strings, you don't really feel a difference. I do prefer the Gibraltar 3 simply because the intonation is set with a Phillips head screwdriver versus an odd 2.5mm Allen key for the Gibraltar 2, but not the end of the world. Neither of these bridges are going to hinder your playing. Now we can talk about the neck profiles. The RGA here has that kind of premium neck profile, and if you look on the website, it's different measurements than the Wizard 3 that you have on the Axion label here. So the Wizard 3 is going to be slightly thicker by approximately 1mm according to the website. I believe they both have the same fretboard radius. If you play these guitars back to back, you will notice that the Premium is slightly thinner, slightly faster. But if you compare the Premium to, say, a Prestige model, especially one of the older Prestiges or maybe a J Custom, that will feel like a big difference. And if you're going from a Prestige to a Premium, you might even lump in the Premium neck profile with the Wizard 3 more than with the Prestige. This would be a big deal for me some time ago because I used to really dislike the Wizard 3 and used to really love the neck profile on the Prestiges. And I still love the neck profiles on the Prestiges, but I have since, I don't know, grown to love the Wizard 3 neck profile. Maybe I'm just getting old. My hands need more neck to grab onto. But overall, the necks on these two guitars are pretty thin. And while they're not quite as thin as a Prestige, you do get that Ibanez playing experience. So overall playability, if you play these guitars back to back, you will feel a little bit of a difference. The RGA plays a bit faster, a bit better. This does bleed into the conversation about quality too, which we'll talk about next. But everything feels just a bit faster, a bit better put together on the RGA. Not to say that the S here doesn't play well at all. It plays pretty good. I'm not trying to be safe with this answer. The S series is a good guitar. You're not going to injure your hands or anything trying to play fast on this guitar. So let's talk about the quality of these guitars and their stability. And by stability, I mostly mean tuning stability, but I'm also going to talk about how stable the setup is too, how much you have to adjust it. Between these two guitars, the RGA does feel like it is of higher quality. You can tell just by playing it real quick, just to the touch. And for the price difference, you really would hope so. Everything feels a bit more solid, a bit smoother. The neck has that kind of, I don't know, that coating or whatever they put on the Prestige necks. It does have some of that. A bit more so than the lower costing made in Japan guitars too. So that's pretty nice. That was a pleasant surprise. In terms of tuning stability and setup, first we can talk about the locking tuners. These both have locking tuners and they do their job well. No complaints there, no surprises. And as I mentioned, the fixed bridges, they don't shift or break or anything like that. I haven't had any issues with either of these so far. So it's going to come down to the nut and how stable the necks are. Both of these guitars have a plastic nut, which is very unfortunate and confusing. You'd expect on these mid-range, these upper mid-range guitars that they wouldn't cheap out on something like a nut, especially because it isn't really that much more expensive to have a nut made out of a better material, more stable material. I've intentionally not added any lubrication or anything to the nut on either guitar. I wanted to see how bad or good it would be, and I was pleasantly surprised to an extent. It wasn't extremely unstable. It wasn't unusable. Having a plastic nut on these guitars doesn't make them worthless. That being said, I'm not justifying or defending the choice of this nut material. You still have to be mindful of the tuning and what you're doing on the guitar. If you're doing a lot of bends on the guitar, it would be prudent to check that the string hasn't bound in the nut. You will want to check your tuning every few songs. Or if you're recording, maybe every 5 to 10 minutes, just check your tuning, which is a good rule of thumb regardless. You should be checking to make sure you're in tune. And when you do tune these guitars, another good rule of thumb is to tune up. So if you're tuning and you're a bit sharp, tune down more than you need to, then tune up. That'll make sure the string isn't stuck in the nut any kind of weird way. So moving on from the nut to the neck on the Premium here on the RGA has been more stable. I've only set it up once. It's been fantastic. I've been playing it around here. I actually traveled with it and it was just fine. It held its setup perfectly. No issues whatsoever. The neck on the Axion Label, I have had to set it up multiple times through my ownership of it. Every so often I do need to check the setup and make sure it's where I left it and adjust it accordingly when it isn't. So staying around here, I have had to set up this neck multiple times, and then I did take it somewhere else once, and you guessed it, I had to set up the neck again. It wasn't unplayable by any means, but little shifts can make a big difference. All right, other specifications, let's talk about the fret wire real quick. On the Premium here, you do have stainless steel frets, which personally I'm a fan of. I'm a fan of the playing feel, you know, when you're bending, doing vibrato, it feels smoother. And the durability gives good peace of mind. Of course, stainless steel frets aren't indestructible, but I do like how they feel. And the fretwork here is pretty good. It doesn't cut your hand at all. No complaints there. No complaints with the fretwork here on the Axion Label also. It has nickel silver frets and they have the Sub-Zero treatment. And they do feel a bit more, I guess, tough, a bit smoother than the typical untreated nickel silver frets. I don't hate regular nickel frets, of course. I do have some guitars with them. They play just fine. So it's an interesting approach they took with that, an interesting feeling. It was a cool idea, no pun intended. I do still prefer the stainless steel frets if I had to pick. Having the Sub-Zero treatment doesn't really revolutionize things. I'm not running out trying to find more guitars with these. And finally, let's talk about the electronics. They do have different electronic setups. I have had no issues with the electronics or wiring or anything. I have had some Prestiges that have had broken wiring, which is unfortunate. So I'm glad to say these don't have any issues. If you are looking to buy a used one, though, you might not find any used ones of these yet, but you could find some used ones of these. Check to see if they've done any mods to the wiring or anything, change the pickups. Because it won't matter how good the wiring was from the factory. If someone's messed with it, that could cause problems. Now, let's talk about the sound of these guitars. And that might not immediately make too much sense. They have completely different pickups and different pickup layouts. You've got the Fusion Edges on here, and they're passive. And on here, you have the Fishman Fluence Moderns, and they're active. However, both of these guitars do have 5-way switches. Of course, the RGA has the Ultra switch, which is a cool touch. Not personally my cup of tea, but I did like the sounds I was getting out of those. But the point is, you might be considering all options when shopping around. Obviously, if you absolutely have to have a middle single coil, then this guitar here is going to be a non-starter. But if you are considering all options, then you might be open to having either active or passive pickups. You might be considering everything, especially if you're going to save some money picking one over the other. These pickups are fairly modern sounding. You do even have the word modern in the Fishmans, but you can also do rock or other styles too. It's going to come down to how you set your amp or your plugins, your effects, all those good things. Also, you do use different settings if you were trying to get the same sound out of different guitars. So a comparison of how these sound can tell you how they sound relative to each other. But when you're playing these guitars, unless you're practicing alone, you're probably jamming with a friend, you're at band practice, maybe you're performing, you're recording guitar for a song. Both these guitars have pickups that do get the job done, and in a somewhat similar way. They fill the same niche to an extent. So it's going to boil down to if you like the quote-unquote feel of passive pickups or active pickups. Do you want a pickup that is more hot and it's going to pick up more things, more of your inputs, or do you want the feel of passives? So again, if you absolutely need one pickup layout or the other, if you absolutely need actives or passives, then one of these is going to be a non-starter. But if you need something that gets the job done, you know, if you're playing live, for example, then you're at the mercy of the acoustics of the venue. It won't matter what pickups you have. And you're okay with the pickup layouts, both of these will get the job done. All right, so overall, which one of these would I pick? Well, these are both my guitars, so I'd pick both of them. But that's a safe answer. You want me to pick just one, and I would pick the RGA. There are multiple reasons for that. It is a little higher quality, it is a little better playing, and I'm also personally biased towards the RGA. I've wanted one ever since I started playing guitar many years ago. So that this guitar having a bit better tuning stability and having the neck being more stable, that'd make me pick this guitar. You could make a strong case for the S series here. It would be great if the neck was a bit more stable. I do my own guitar setups and I've gotten okay enough at it that whenever a guitar is out of whack, I can adjust it and get it back to how I like it playing. So as long as I'm on top of that, it sounds pretty good. It looks awesome. It does everything I need it to do. If I was picking one, then saving some hundreds of dollars would be pretty attractive. That being said, is the S series worth the price? Again, I would have liked it if it was a bit more stable. And even though I can adjust it, I have the skills to do that. I have to recognize that I would have to spend a little bit of time doing that whenever that popped up. And sometimes we don't always have time. We've got work, commutes, maybe you have kids to take care of, other obligations. Sometimes you only have 10 or 20 minutes to sit down and play guitar. And if you spend that time adjusting the guitar instead of recording your idea, maybe that guitar isn't going to work for your needs. But especially if you can get these at a lower price than what they're selling for new, the issues aren't so bad to drive me away from this guitar. Now, is the RGA worth the price? At the time of recording this video, this guitar just came out, this model. So if you're comparing new prices, the S series even selling new is still less expensive than this. And I'd say this is almost worth the price. I was really impressed with the quality of this. This is the best playing and feeling made in Indonesia guitar I've ever played. And that's saying something. I do like made in Indonesia guitars. I have some Solars, I have other made in Indonesia Ibanez's. There's good attention to detail here. I like it for all the reasons I've mentioned, but I do have to mention that the price of this, it is getting into made in Japan territory when it comes to Ibanez. In fact, it's much more expensive than the Genesis series, which while isn't technically a prestige, it is made in Japan. So under that lens, why would they cut corners with something like a plastic nut? That really doesn't make any sense to me. But still, this is a great playing guitar. If you're a fan of Ibanez and want a really solid archtop super strat, this is a great choice. And while the RGA does cost more, you can feel that it plays faster and is higher quality than the S series here. Even though if it's just a little bit, that does add up over time. Every practice session, every recording take, every band practice. But what do you think? Would you pick up an Axion Label S here if you can find one, save some money? Or is the new RGA your cup of tea? Be sure to comment down below. Also comment if you have any questions, anything else you'd like to know. Of course, this is YouTube, so I have to say the YouTube things. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share the video, print out every frame and mail it. Check out the socials and join the Discord. And if you're looking for something cool to listen to, please consider streaming my music. I do some video game covers and some originals. And as always, peace.